Chinese company just started taking deposits on a flying car. Not a concept, not a render, a vehicle that lifts off the ground, flies, and lands in your driveway. It's called the X2. It exists, and you can reserve one today. The regulatory approval came through 3 weeks ago. The first customer deliveries are scheduled for 2025. While Boeing spent 15 years and $11 billion trying to certify a flying taxi that still doesn't have a launch date, a company called Xpeng AeroHT did it in 4 years. The X2 costs about $280,000. That's less than a Lamborghini Huracan, and it threatens 2 industries at once. If you love stories about technology that changes the game before anyone notices, hit like and subscribe. We cover the shifts most people miss until it's too late. Here's what makes this one different. Every flying car announcement for the last 20 years has been the same. A billionaire shows a flashy video. Investors write checks. The timeline slips. The company quietly folds or pivots to drones. The X2 broke that pattern. It completed over 15,000 test flights. It passed China's airworthiness standards. And Xpeng isn't a startup. It's a $15 billion electric vehicle company that already builds 150,000 cars a year. The founder is a man named Xpeng. He started in software. He sold his first company to Alibaba. Then he looked at Tesla and decided China could do it better. The X2 isn't the first electric vertical takeoff vehicle. That category is called eVTOL. Joby Aviation in California has been working on one since 2009. Volocopter in Germany since 2011. Lilium in Munich raised over $1 billion. Archer Aviation partnered with United Airlines. Every one of them is still waiting for the FAA to say yes. The FAA certification process for a new aircraft category takes an average of 7 years. China's CAAC did it in 4, and that gap is about to reshape 2 industries. The X2 competes with cars on the ground and helicopters in the air. A Robinson R-44 helicopter costs $505,000 and needs a trained pilot. The X2 costs almost half that and will fly itself. Here's the detail that matters. The Western companies are building air taxis, vehicles that work like Uber. You call one, it picks you up. A company owns the fleet. The X2 is different. Xpeng is selling it to individuals. You park it in your garage. You fly it yourself. That changes the entire market. An air taxi needs infrastructure, vertiports, maintenance crews, charging networks, a regulatory framework for commercial aviation. The X2 only needs a flat surface the size of 2 parking spaces and a wall outlet. It charges in 90 minutes on a standard home connection. Range is 35 kilometers on a single charge. That's enough to skip the traffic from the suburbs to downtown. And it doesn't need a runway. That last part is the breakthrough. A helicopter needs 30 meters of clear space in every direction for safe takeoff. An airplane needs a runway. The X2 takes off like a drone, straight up. 4 rotors, 2 in front, 2 in back. Each rotor has its own electric motor. If one fails, the other 3 compensate automatically. The body is carbon fiber. The total weight is 560 kilograms empty. Maximum takeoff weight is 760 kilograms. That's enough for 2 passengers and light cargo. Top speed is 130 kilometers per hour. Not fast by airplane standards, but faster than you'll ever move in city traffic. And the noise level is 65 decibels at ground level during takeoff. A normal conversation is 60 decibels. A car horn is 110. Now here's how the engineering works. The 4 rotors are fixed pitch. That means the blades don't tilt. All the control comes from varying the speed of the individual motors. Want to go forward? Speed up the rear rotors. Slow down the front ones. The vehicle tilts and moves. Want to turn? Speed up the rotors on one side. It's the same principle as a quadcopter drone scaled up to carry people. The difference is redundancy. Each rotor has its own battery pack, its own motor controller, its own power management system. If any single component fails, the flight computer reroutes power and adjusts the other 3 rotors to compensate. The X2 can land safely on 3 rotors. It's been tested. The battery technology came from Catchell. That's contemporary AmpereX technology, the largest battery maker in the world. Bigger than LG, bigger than Panasonic. CATL supplies Tesla. It supplies BMW. It supplies Volkswagen. The X2 uses the same cells that go into electric cars but arranged in 4 independent packs for redundancy. Total capacity is 38 kilowatt hours. That's about a quarter of the battery in a Tesla Model 3. Energy density is 160 watt-hours per kilogram. Flight time on a full charge is 25 minutes. In real use, that becomes about 18 minutes of flying, with a safety margin for landing. That's the current limitation. But CATL is already testing batteries at 250 watt-hours per kilogram. That would extend range to 50 kilometers. The flight control system is fully autonomous. The X2 can take off, fly a pre-programmed route, and land without any pilot input. But it also has manual controls, a joystick for directional control, throttle for altitude. The interface looks like a video game, because it is. Xpeng hired engineers from DJI. That's the company that makes 70% of the world's consumer drones. DJI spent 15 years perfecting stabilization algorithms for devices that cost $1,000. Xpeng took those algorithms and applied them to a vehicle that weighs 200 times more. The flight computer makes 2,000 adjustments per second. A human pilot can't react that fast. The X2 is more stable in wind than a helicopter. Xpeng opened reservations in November 2024. The deposit is $5,000, fully refundable. The final price is $280,000 before incentives. Deliveries start in late 2025 for Chinese customers. International deliveries follow in 2026. The first production run is 10,000 units. That's already a bigger manufacturing target than any Western eVTOL company has announced. Joby Aviation plans to build 500 units in its first year. Archer Aviation is targeting 650. Xpeng is starting at 10,000 because it already has the supply chain. It already builds 12,500 cars per month. It knows how to scale production, and it has the regulatory approval to actually deliver. That's the difference. Western companies are still pitching investors. Xpeng is taking customer deposits. There's a bigger story playing out here. The X2 isn't just a flying car, it's a pattern. The same pattern that already reshaped the electric vehicle market. 5 years ago, Tesla was the only company making a long-range EV anyone wanted to buy. Then BYD happened. BYD sold 3 million electric vehicles in 2023. Tesla sold 1.8 million. BYD didn't win by making a better battery or a faster car. It won by making an EV normal people could afford, and by building the supply chain to manufacture at scale. The BYD Seal costs $25,000 in China. It has 400 miles of range. It looks better than a Tesla Model 3. And it's available today in 50 countries. Xpeng is following the same playbook. Start with the technology, prove it works. Scale manufacturing. Undercut the incumbents on price. And move faster than regulators in the West can keep up. The X2 costs half what a Robinson helicopter costs, and a fifth of what Joby Aviation's air taxi will probably cost once it reaches production. It's also simpler. Joby's design has 6 tilt rotors. Lilium has 36 ducted fans. More parts, more complexity, more things to break. The X2 has 4 fixed rotors. That's it. Easier to build, easier to maintain, easier to certify. The same philosophy BYD used to beat Tesla. Make it simple, make it cheap, make a lot of them. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable for Boeing and Airbus. Those companies have been working on urban air mobility for over a decade. Boeing invested in Xpeng AeroHT. Airbus built City Airbus. Both projects are still in the testing phase. Both are waiting for FAA approval. Both are targeting commercial fleet operations, not individual sales. And both are expensive. Xpeng's air taxi will likely cost over $1 million per unit. The business model depends on high utilization, flying passengers all day, charging $3 per mile, making the economics work through volume. The X2 doesn't need that. It's a personal vehicle. You buy it, you own it, you fly it when you want. That's a fundamentally different market, and it's one Boeing never prepared for. Mercedes-Benz is in the same position. The company partnered with Volocopter in 2017, invested over $30 million. The goal was to launch air taxi services at the Paris Olympics in 2024. That didn't happen. Volocopter is still waiting for European Union Aviation Safety Agency approval. Meanwhile, Xpeng is already taking deposits. The pattern repeats. Western companies bet on regulatory approval that takes years. Chinese companies bet on execution speed and build the product while waiting for the paperwork. By the time the FAA or ESA says yes, the Chinese version is already in production. It happened with electric cars. It happened with batteries. It happened with solar panels. And now it's happening with flying cars. The man behind Xpeng is He Xiaopeng. Born in 1977 in Hubei province, studied computer science, co-founded UC Web, a mobile browser, in 2004. Alibaba bought it for $4.4 billion in 2014. He could have retired. Instead, he used the money to start Xpeng Motors. The idea was simple. Tesla proved electric cars could be desirable, but they were still too expensive for most people. He wanted to build an EV for the Chinese middle class, a car that didn't feel like a compromise. The first Xpeng model launched in 2018. It cost $30,000. It had 250 miles of range. It looked modern, and it sold. Xpeng went public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2020. Valuation: $15 billion. In 2020, He Xiaopeng launched the AeroHT division. AeroHT stands for Aerospace High Tech. The mission: build a flying car. Not a concept, not a toy for billionaires. A vehicle that middle-class professionals could buy and use for daily commuting. The engineering team included former engineers from DJI, from Boeing's China division, and from Comac, the company building China's first commercial airliner. They had two rules. First, it had to be certifiable under existing regulations. No waiting for new laws. Second, it had to use existing technology. No breakthroughs required. Just smart integration. That's how they finished in 4 years. They didn't invent anything. They combined what already worked. The first X2 prototype flew in 2021. 15 test pilots put it through 15,000 flights over 3 years. They tested it in rain, in wind, at different altitudes, with different payloads. They deliberately failed components to verify the redundancy systems. They crashed controlled prototypes to study failure modes. Every test was documented for the regulators. By the time Xpeng submitted the certification application, they had more test data than any eVTOL program in history. That's why the CAC approval came fast. There were no surprises. Every question had already been answered. The X2 wasn't experimental. It was proven. And Xpeng had the manufacturing infrastructure to build thousands. That's what the Western companies are missing. They have prototypes. Xpeng has a product. Now look at the competitive landscape. In the United States, the FAA has been working on eVTOL regulations since 2016, 8 years. They still haven't certified a single vehicle for commercial sale. The rules keep changing. The safety standards keep evolving. Every time a company gets close, the goalposts move. Joby Aviation submitted its application in 2022. It's still pending. Archer Aviation submitted in 2023. Still pending. Lilium thought it was close. Then Germany's regulator asked for more data. The program stalled. Investors got nervous. Lilium laid off 1,000 employees in 2024. Meanwhile, in China, the X2 has approval. It's taking deposits. The factory is tooling up. First deliveries are 8 months away. That's the execution gap. This is the part that should worry Detroit and Seattle. The X2 is just the beginning. Xpeng is already working on the X3. That's a hybrid design. It drives on the road like a car. Then the rotors fold out and it flies. It's a transformer. The wings retract into the body when you're driving. Extend when you want to fly. The engineering challenge is massive, but Xpeng has proven it can execute on massive challenges. The X3 is scheduled for 2026, 2 years after the X2. If that timeline holds, Xpeng will have leapfrogged the entire Western eVTOL industry twice. First with a pure flying vehicle, then with a flying car that actually drives. And the supply chain that builds the X3 will be in China. The batteries, the motors, the carbon fiber, the flight computers, all of it. Compare that to the Western approach. Boeing partners with Wisk. Wisk designs an air taxi. Then, Wisk has to find a battery supplier. Then, a motor supplier. Then, a carbon fiber supplier. Then, a flight computer supplier. Each one is a negotiation. Each one is a separate contract. Each one is a potential bottleneck, and each one is optimizing for its own profit. The supply chain is fragmented. In China, it's vertical. CATL makes the batteries. BYD makes the motors. Xpeng controls the integration. They're all in the same ecosystem. They share technology, they move fast, and they don't have to negotiate with each other. That's why the X2 costs $280,000, while Western equivalents will cost $1 million. It's not just labor costs, it's supply chain efficiency. Tesla learned this the hard way. For years, Elon Musk talked about building batteries in-house. He didn't do it fast enough. Now BYD makes better batteries for less money, and BYD also makes the cars. That vertical integration is why BYD sells 3 million EVs a year while making a profit. Tesla sells fewer cars and the margins are shrinking. The same thing is about to happen in aviation. Xpeng controls the entire stack. Western aerospace companies don't. They're assemblers. They integrate components from dozens of suppliers. That worked fine when they were building 747s. It doesn't work when you're trying to move fast and undercut on price. The X2 proves that, and the X3 will prove it even more clearly. A flying car that drives, for less than a luxury sedan costs today. That's the threat. There's one more factor. The Chinese government wants this to succeed. Urban air mobility is part of China's 14th five-year plan. The government is building vertiport infrastructure in major cities. Shenzhen has 3 already. Beijing is adding 4. The regulatory framework is designed to move fast. That doesn't mean it's unsafe. The CAC certification standards are as rigorous as the FAA's, but the process is streamlined. One agency, clear timelines, predictable outcomes. In the United States, an eVTOL company has to deal with the FAA and the NTSB, and potentially the FTC, and state regulators, and local noise ordinances, and city zoning boards. Each one can delay the project. Each one can demand changes. That regulatory fragmentation is a hidden cost. It slows everything down, and it gives China a structural advantage. So here's what happens next. The first X2 units deliver in late 2025. Owners start posting videos, flying over traffic, landing in their driveways. The novelty wears off in 6 months, and it becomes normal. Just another transportation option. Rich people in Shanghai and Guangzhou start using them for the commute. It saves 45 minutes each way. That's 90 minutes a day, 7.5 hours a week. That's real. Then the price drops. Xpeng announces a smaller 2-seater version for $150,000 in 2027. That's Tesla Model S money. Suddenly, it's not just for the rich. It's for anyone who values time over money. And the market expands. Meanwhile, Joby and Archer are still waiting for FAA approval. And when they get it, their air taxi will cost $3 per mile to ride. The X2 costs $0 per mile after you buy it. That's the difference between ownership and a service. The geopolitical angle is harder to predict. Will the US allow Chinese-made flying cars to operate in American airspace? That's not a technology question. It's a political question. The US already banned Huawei from telecom networks. It restricted Chinese drones. It's investigating Chinese EVs for national security risks. A flying vehicle with cameras, sensors, and GPS is even more sensitive. So Xpeng probably won't sell the X2 in the US, at least not soon. But that doesn't matter. The global market is bigger. Europe, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Latin America. And even if the X2 never flies in America, the technology will. Someone will license it. Someone will build a version in Mexico or Canada or Europe using Xpeng's patents. The knowledge has escaped. That's what matters. The West no longer has a monopoly on advanced aerospace. There's a parallel here to high-speed rail. In 1998, China had 0 high-speed trains. It licensed the technology from Germany and Japan. Siemens and Kawasaki thought they were selling trains. They were actually selling knowledge. Chinese engineers studied the designs, improved them, cut the costs. 10 years later, China was building high-speed rail faster and cheaper than anyone else. Now China has 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. That's more than the rest of the world combined. The trains go 350 kilometers per hour, and China exports the technology. Indonesia bought Chinese trains. Thailand bought Chinese trains. Saudi Arabia is talking to China. The same thing could happen with flying cars. Xpeng cracks the code. Other countries license it. The supply chain spreads. And 20 years from now, flying cars are everywhere, except maybe the United States. Here's the bottom line. A Chinese company just turned a science fiction trope into a product you can buy. It costs $280,000. It's certified. It's taking deposits. First deliveries are next year. The company that built it started as a software startup. The founder borrowed money to build refrigerators. 15 years later, he's delivering flying cars before Boeing and Airbus have certified a single eVTOL. That's not about technology. Both sides have smart engineers. It's about speed. It's about vertical integration. It's about a regulatory system designed to say yes instead of maybe. And it's about a supply chain that works as one organism instead of 100 separate deals. The X2 is just the start. The X3 is coming. Other Chinese companies are watching, and the West is still debating the rules. The future of personal aviation wasn't decided in Seattle or Toulouse. It was decided in Guangzhou, by a software engineer who wanted to make transportation better, and by a government that wanted it to happen fast. The X2 exists. You can touch it. You can fly it, and in 18 months, someone in Shanghai will use it to skip rush hour, while someone in Los Angeles sits in traffic wondering why their flying car is still 5 years away. That's the gap. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next shift out of China is going to make this look small. And I want to know, would you buy a flying car for $280,000? Or would you wait for the Western version that costs $1 million? Drop it in the comments. I read every one.